Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Hello to you if it's your first time here. My name is Crystal and in this video I have another journal idea for you, and that is starting an art journal as a non-artist. My videos tend to be long and chatty, so as usual I have prepared timestamps for you below in case you want to skip ahead to the chapter you want. But if you're joining me for the whole thing, grab a snack or drink, do your chores, or just get comfy and let's get to it. Over the years, there would always be random points in my journaling where I'll find myself with sudden bouts of inspiration to paint, and recently I have been doing a paint by numbers kit which somehow ignited the inspiration to paint again. However, I would like to emphasize that I am not an artist at all. I'm just someone who really loves to paint and finds joy in this creative activity. At first, I was even debating whether I should make a video about this because it's scary to talk about something I love, but also something I'm obviously not very good at, and a lot of people on the internet can be mean. But I'm choosing to focus on the thought that there are a lot of kind and encouraging people out there. Another thing that I've realized in my overthinking of all this is I'm not very good at painting and watercolor, and that is my power. It just means I can only improve from here. It may be just for fun, but I really want to put more effort into learning more about this hobby, so lately, I've started taking this class by Kateri Ewing called Painting with Watercolors on Craftsy, who is the sponsor of this video. If it's your first time hearing about them, Craftsy is a community of creatives where members can find all sorts of learning and inspiration, and even discover new creative interests. For now, I'm really enjoying the Painting with Watercolors class because of how organized it is and how tailored it is for a beginner like me. I love how Kateri Ewing clearly explains the very basics, from choosing supplies, then explaining introductory painting techniques that I can apply and practice. But more than that, I'm looking forward to exploring Craftsy's rich library of resources for other things that I'm also interested in. I'm actually eyeing the class called Crocheting Accessories by Valeria Torres because I've been wanting to try crochet for a very long time. If you're like me who loves to try all new creative things like sewing, knitting, crochet, baking, and many other craft and DIY related things, go to the link in my description or scan the QR code on screen to get the first full year of Craftsy Premium for only $1.49. Offer is valid for new members only. Thank you to Craftsy for sponsoring this video. Going back to my art journal, I really didn't have a dedicated journal for painting before, but I would do some random paintings in whatever journal I was in. For example, this is a journal that my mom gave me back in 2020, and since that was the year of lockdowns, my husband and I actually took painting as a bonding activity when our days off would match. We were both working in different hospitals back then, so it was a really scary time, and we found painting to be a relaxing activity. We would share a prompt, then work on our own paintings individually. I used this notebook for paintings and other random things, so I just ignored the dates. So this was our first prompt, and it was painting somewhere we have been. So I was trying to paint a photo of us while we were in Nami Island in South Korea, but this was really frustrating for me because I felt it was too ambitious with all these details, and I also do not have any technique or style whatsoever, which shows. I felt better about the later prompts though, so I'll just do a quick flip through. So this was all just watercolor and pen, and This journal only had regular paper, but for something done just for fun, I still love how these turned out. This was actually a swatch of my stamp pads, like ink pads. And you can see that it really bleeds through because this is just regular paper. Then I also, these are the girls from a Peon washi tape, and I just swatched them here and wrote random lyrics. Anyway, eventually the world started opening up and we could go out again, so painting actually fell by the wayside. Then last year, I used this very beautiful Hobonichi Hon, and by this point, I wasn't painting at all. My watercolors and supplies were just sitting there. Then one day in September, I saw this gorgeous cover reveal for a book called Main Characters by Hannah Orenstein, and something just clicked. I saw the cover and I just had this strong compulsion to paint it. So I did in this journal. This is one of my favorite pages in this book, and I can't get over how well the Tomoe river paper took the water and the watercolor in this one. It didn't bleed through. Okay. It didn't bleed through, and the crinkle that you get after the painting dries is so very satisfying. So even though this is the only painting I did since 2024, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Then when the Hobonichi lineup for 2026 dropped in September of this year, I was again in love with the Liberty Fabrics Hon in Sasha Kiora, and it just reminded me of this painting that brought me joy in making. So I started daydreaming about having this huge Hobonichi lineup for next year and daydreaming about using the A6 Hon as my dedicated art journal for painting and watercolor. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how unrealistic it is because currently any Hobonichi journal is still out of my budget. And then in October, I read this book by Abby Jimenez called Just for the Summer, and again, I was hit by this compulsion to paint the cover. I don't know what it is about me and book covers, but there's just something about the colors and the style of it that made me want to recreate it. And of course, I also enjoyed reading this book a lot. This book made me laugh and cry, and I think the two main characters had good chemistry and were very well written. The Easter egging was also very strong in this one, so if you want to start reading Abby Jimenez, I always recommend going through her catalog in publication order, starting with The Friend Zone. I think the payoff is really worth it if you end up becoming a fan of her work. Anyway, that was a bit off topic, but when I had the urge to paint the Just for the Summer cover, I kept putting it off, still hoping that maybe I'll get to buy an A6 Hon for 2026. Then, when I began working on that paint by numbers kit I mentioned, it made me realize how I really miss painting and I could no longer put it off. I told myself, I have my watercolors, I have my brushes, and I have an actual unused watercolor insert from Traveler's Company, so there's really no excuse to not paint. So I started it. I actually filmed bits and pieces of the process, so I am inserting those clips here. this is how the painting turned out. If you watched the whole painting process, you may have noticed that I actually used acrylic for this, and I'm not that knowledgeable about the medium, so I didn't like the experience very much. Maybe I'll just stick with my watercolors. Also, since I still struggle with drawing or painting people, I just stuck with the background landscape with this one. For the art journal setup, I am using this Traveler's Notebook watercolor insert in the passport size. It only has 20 pages, so it doesn't feel intimidating, and I'm really hopeful that I can fill this art journal more before the year ends. When going out, I can put this journal in my TN passport in olive. This usually carries my note-taking insert, this one, and the sticker release insert. But I can always add a watercolor journal, and it can still fit all three. I also have my portable colored pencils. To be honest, I really wanted one of those Traveler's Company mini ones, but I had this perfectly working colored pencils and I only needed to make it travel friendly. So I had this tin container and my husband cut my regular sized colored pencils in half. So this was actually the other half. And now I have this. He also bought me this pastel colored set, so he's going to also cut this in half since I can fit more colors in here. Then I have two sets of these watercolor pans from Prima Marketing, I think, and I've had this since 2020. So this is the Tropicals set, and then this is the Vintage Pastels. And I can just bring either of these in my travels or when going out. For brushes, I used to have a water brush, but I can't find it anywhere, so I can just bring these two regular brushes that I use and put it in my pen case. So this is the Lit Lab Smart Fit small case. And that's really all I need for my art journal setup. Since I really want to commit to making a habit of doing more watercolor paintings, I'm hoping to do more art journal of a non-artist videos in the future. If that's something you're interested in, please consider subscribing to my channel and click the notification bell to be updated of my latest videos. Also, if you've watched until this part, please leave a paint palette emoji in the comments so I know you watched the whole thing. I love seeing your comments and of course I reply to all of them. Thank you very much for your time and I'm hoping to see you again in my next video.